So I'm calling to order the February meeting of the VOREC Steering Committee. I'm Jackie Dagger, the Program Manager for the Vermont Outdoor Recreation Economic Collaborative. And thank you everyone for being here, and also welcome to our first meeting of 2023. This year has started off with a bang already, and I have a feeling it's going to be a really big year for our work on outdoor recreation and as the Vermont Outdoor Recreation Economic Collaborative. We have a lot to share today about what's been happening since our December meeting and some discussion planned to get your input on some of the important items we're working on. So I'm going to jump right in. The first thing I'm going to do is copy the agenda into the chat so you all have it. Give me 1 second to do that. Right. Great. So we're here at Welcome and Introductions. We are going to be getting started with our business meeting shortly around 9:10 a.m. I have some steering committee updates, just some logistical things I want to update you all on. And then around 10 a.m., we're going to have a discussion and talk about some legislative session opportunities and some narrative talking points that we've been developing around Vermont's outdoor recreation and VOREC. So that'll be the legislative session brainstorm. I also have some updates to share and hoping for your questions and feedback on the VOREC Community Grant Program work we've been doing. So we'll have that discussion around 10:40 a.m. And then we'll start to wrap up around 10:50 with public comment and other business, and then adjourn at 11 a.m. So we have 2 hours together. So with that, any questions on the agenda? Items you thought were going to be on there that aren't? Great. Seeing none, we're going to move into introductions. So like I said, I see a couple of members of the public joining us here today and some staff. Really great to see you here. We always welcome you listening in, and also taking the time out of your days to join us. To a 2-hour meeting is not an easy thing to fit into your day. So we really are excited to see you here, and that you have interest in the conversation that we're having. I provided this reminder earlier, but just as a reminder, although we do have a public comment section at the end of our agenda. So I encourage you to hold any comments or thoughts you have until that time. And please do stay muted with your video off until we get to that public comment portion. I'm going to lead some introductions, and I'm going to start with steering committee members, and then we'll go to our partners who are joining us today. So for steering committee members, please, when I call your name, go ahead and unmute and share your name and organization. And I'm going to start with Becca Washburn, our new chair.
Thanks, Jackie. That's right. I wasn't even thinking that way. I'm Becca Washburn. I'm the Director of Lands Administration and Recreation, and now a steering committee member, where before I was providing staff support to this committee. I work for Forest Parks and Recreation, and am really excited to be in this role and happy to be providing some remarks a little later in the agenda.
Thanks, Becca. And I don't believe, let's go to Mike DeBonis.
Good morning, everybody. Mike DeBonis, Executive Director of the Green Mountain Club.
Thanks, Mike. Hal.
Good morning, everybody. Hal Elms here with Pinnacle Outdoor Group. We're a wholesale manufacturers rep agency in the outdoor business based here in Middlesex, Vermont.
Jean, if you can unmute.
Jean Gervais, President of the Island Pond Chamber of Commerce and Chair of the Brighton Select Board.
Okay. Kim, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kim Rope. I'm with the Vermont Council on Rural Development.
Josh.
Josh Ryan. I'm the principal of Timber and Stone LLC. We're a trail design and construction business based in East Montpelier.
Thanks, Josh. Drew.
Drew Simmons, president of Pale Morning Media. We are a PR and strategic communication firm that works with outdoor industry companies and organizations around the country, sometimes out of the country. So,
Carrie.
Carrie Thomas. I'm the executive director of the Northern Forest Canoe Trail.
Great. And I believe that's all of the steering committee members I had seen join. Has anyone joined?
Yep, I'm jumping in here. This is Shelby on the 917 area code. Can folks hear me?
Great. Yes, we can hear you, Shelby.
Okay, great. So I'm with the Trust for Public Land. We're a national parks and conservation organization, having worked in Vermont for the last 30 or so years and based in a combination of Warren and Montpelier. And I am afraid I'm going to have to log off a little before the 10 o'clock hour. I'm catching a flight on vacation, actually, but tuning in here before. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, Shelby. All right. And I did see a couple of other folks join us. Just as a reminder, if you are listening in as a member of the public, you're welcome here to listen in, but we do encourage you to stay muted with your video off until the public comment portion of our meeting. All right. Are there any other steering committee members who have joined who I have not called on? All right, and Rich, please do go ahead and turn your video off. We try and focus videos on steering committee members who are active participants in the meeting. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to move on to our partners, and I believe it's Mike Schmidt that you're the only partner here today with us, so please go ahead and unmute and introduce yourself and share your organization and role in today's meeting.
Good morning, everyone. Mike Schmidt, along with my co-founder, Bill Brzezzi, we operate Velocity Sales and Marketing. Like Hal, we are independent manufacturers, reps, and we specialize in the outdoor industry. I'm also co-chair of VOBA and chair of their policy committee. Thanks for having me.
Amazing. Thanks, Mike, for being here. I know we'll hear from you a little bit further in our business meeting. I also wanted to share that Mark Sherman is absent from this meeting today due to scheduling conflict, but he says hello. And I believe that's it. We are still missing a few people, so as more folks join us, I'll try and save a moment for them to introduce themselves. I'm going to move us forward into our business meeting. And firstly, I want to recognize that the notes from our December meeting are still coming together. I'm hoping to have those out to you all soon, but we'll plan to approve those minutes from our meeting in December when we meet in April, along with the minutes from this meeting. And then I'll go ahead and make those available on the website. You may have also noticed that Caroline is absent today, Caroline Zelinga. That is because she is returning to her teaching roots as a high school English teacher. She's working towards her licensure and will be ending her full-time employment at FPR next week. Caroline has been a tremendous partner to VOREC, providing administrative support for our work and her expert communications eye on our materials. We're really excited for her, but she will also be missed and has been a really great partner in our work together. So I wanted you all to be aware of that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Becca to provide some remarks as our new chair.
Thanks, Jackie. I think anybody that has been paying attention to FPR's comings and goings lately realizes that we're experiencing a ton of change. And with that, brings lots of exciting opportunity, and also the opportunity to really reflect on the legacies that have been left behind by staff and other friends and partners that we've had the privilege to work with. And I think the thing that I've spent the most time considering as I wanted to prepare for this role and prepare for today and how to set the stage for what it means to me to step into this position is to really acknowledge that it is an honor and a privilege to be able to succeed Mike as chair of this committee. We were really fortunate to have someone with his knowledge and passion for access to outdoor recreation leading FPR at a time when I think the importance of outdoor recreation was becoming a national topic of conversation, while at the same time, the commensurate pressure to get it right has been intensifying. So this is a really important time for Vermonters that find outdoor recreation to be a really core part of what it means to live here. And to have Mike's leadership during that time is really fantastic. I think the part that sort of drives me and makes me think most about what it means to chair this esteemed committee is to remember that Governor Scott established VOREC to set us up for success in advancing outdoor recreation and the outdoor rec economy without compromising our commitment to environmental stewardship. And that's the part that's really critical to what we do. We're here because we believe in supporting the advancement of outdoor recreation without sacrificing what it means to look out our window and to feel good about the ecological function and connectivity of our landscape that we also recreate on. So I feel like this is a tremendous privilege. And there's a lot of exciting work ahead for us, as Jackie sort of set up in her opening remarks. We've got a lot of work to do, and it's great work. And there is no better group to be focused and committed to advancing this than the group we have here. So I thought, in order to recognize and honor all of the time and effort and thought that you're putting in as volunteers, that it would be important for me to share with you what my goals are, sort of underpinning this approach to the role that I'll be stepping into. And I think the things that I think about are really a commitment to building on the success and durability of VOREC. That's an important aspect of what it means to be the chair. Is we want the durability of VOREC and advancing the pillars of VOREC to be at the core of what we do and what I'm here to help advocate for. I think authenticity is another thing that I find really important and a core value of mine. Making sure that I show up as a spokesperson for the committee and am really authentically engaging with each and every one of you. That's an important value of mine that I will absolutely be bringing to this this new role that I'll be playing. And then the last one, I think, is active listening. I think anytime there's a change like this, it's really important to create opportunities for feedback, ideas, and suggestions for what it looks like for us to move forward. And I am eager for and strongly believe in opportunities to provide feedback about specifically what I can be doing to best serve for VOREC and you as VOREC steering committee members in this role. And you can expect I'll be pretty proactive in seeking out this feedback from all of you, even if it is on a chairlift, on a walk, having a beer. I love any opportunity to have a conversation and better understand what it means to you to be part of this committee and how I can best serve you in this role. So with that, I don't have anything else I want to say unless there's questions before we jump into the next part of the agenda that Jackie will be introducing. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Becca. Excited to have you in the chair position and looking forward to a lot of really great things to come. So at this point, you've likely noticed that we've switched up our business meetings slightly. Instead of updates from the chair moving forward, I'll be sharing updates as the program manager. And the purpose of this section of the agenda is to keep you all updated on work that's happening around outdoor recreation nationally, as well as work happening regionally supported by the Northern Borders Regional Commission. So really just wanting to make sure that this group is staying connected to what's happening outside of Vermont in terms of outdoor recreation economy work, so that we can be thinking about how we show up there and utilize that in our own work in Vermont. So with that, I'll just start with some updates from a national level and work that the Confluence of States is doing. So in January, the new Confluence Chair, Brad Garman, who's the Executive Director of the Michigan Outdoor Recreation Industry Office, and Vice Chair Carol Ann Collette, who's the Director of the Maine Office of Outdoor Recreation, took the lead. The first order of business was to confirm Confluence meetings that are happening in 2023, and there's going to be 2. The first one's anticipated to happen in April. It hasn't been fully confirmed yet, but it's looking like probably take place in Maryland, to happen in conjunction with the Outdoor Industry Association's Capital Summit, which will be happening in Washington, D.C. The second meeting is going to be held in conjunction with the North Carolina Outdoor Economy Conference, which is happening in September. And the State Outdoor Business Alliance Network is also going to be meeting there. So we're hoping to have some overlap and opportunities to meet and connect on the work that we're doing together. The Confluence is also pulling together an Office of Outdoor Recreation guidebook. That's going to be an available resource for current and new state directors of offices of outdoor recreation. The guidebook summarizes a lot of lessons learned from current state directors, and includes some lessons learned from Vermont. And that is going to be released by the Outdoor Recreation Roundtable through a virtual panel on March 9th. And I haven't seen an announcement go out about that, but I'll certainly forward it in case anyone's interested in listening in on that and learning more about what that guidebook is about. The Outdoor Recreation Roundtable and the Outdoor Industry Association are also part of a group of stakeholders who are looking at the Farm Bill that needs to be passed this fall. That group of stakeholders is working on narrowing a core list of outdoor recreation priorities that outdoor recreation advocates can get behind. So I thought that was really interesting, something for us to be aware of, and I'll forward more information or keep you guys updated as there's more to share. FICOR, the Federal Interagency Council on Outdoor Recreation, also completed its first output in partnership with the USDA. And that is that the USDA has announced a memorandum of understanding between the USDA Rural Development, the National Institute of Food and Agriculture, and the U.S. Forest Service to partner on developing an annual plan to expand economic opportunities related to recreation in communities surrounding America's national forests. So if you're interested in learning more about that partnership, I'm going to drop the press release that went out, a link to that in the chat. So let me go ahead and do that. Oh, great. And Drew, I do see that you left a question about the dates for the Maryland OIA Summit. That's the OIA Summit is mid-April. I believe it's the 7th. I think it's the week of April 17th. But the Confluence would likely be meeting before that for some period of time, and that hasn't been confirmed. All right. Any questions on that sort of national level work? Any of those updates? Again, I'll keep you updated as I have more information, but mostly just wanted you to have that as a FYI so you can dig in further where you're interested. Great. So the big update on a regional, in our regional work with the Northern Borders Regional Commission is that the Northern Borders Regional Commission and the Northern Forest Center has set a date for the next Northern Forest Outdoor Recreation Symposium. So as a reminder, this is a follow-up event on the really successful symposium that happened in 2018. a lot of really great conversations and actions about outdoor recreation economies in the Northern Forest region happened following that event, and the Northern Forest Center is excited and hopeful for another event that produces that level of conversation. So that event is being scheduled for, or has been scheduled for, May 14th to 15th, 2024. So this is an early FYI to get it on your calendars and hold those dates. It's going to be happening at the Mount Washington Hotel. The planning committee for that event had its first meeting on January 19th. I'm a part of that group, as well as Kelly Alt from the Vermont Outdoor Business Alliance. And we're going to be working on framing out, what are the discussions that we want to have what are the big themes at a regional level that we want to be able to work on together. And likely we'll be reaching out to others as that agenda starts to come together. And I'll make sure to keep you all updated and informed as planning continues. All right, so with that, I'm going to pause and ask if there's any questions on regional updates. I'm also looking to see if we've had anyone else from the steering committee join.
Frank and Abby are here.
Perfect. So Frank and Abby, glad you were able to make it. I do want to give you a chance to introduce yourselves, but I just am looking for any questions about the program manager updates before we do that. Not seeing anyone raising hands or eagerly waiting to be called on. So Frank and Abby, I'll go ahead and call your names, and when I do, just please go ahead and unmute and share your name and organization. I'll start with Abby.
Sorry, apologies for being late. I was super stuck in the driveway with 4 inches of slush. But the nanny's boyfriend pulled me out. So my name is Abby Long. I am the executive director for Kingdom Trails, and I serve as the mountain bike voice for VOREC.
Thanks, Abby. Frank, go ahead.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Sorry I'm late too. I have the flu. Joy. Well, I'm Frank Stanley, representing Vermont Traditions Coalition in hunting and fishing.
Great. And do we have anyone from the Agency of Commerce and Community Development here yet? All right. Sounds like not. Well, we are going to jump into our sector updates, and just wanted to note that I know there's been a lot going on at the State House, a lot of activity from this group providing testimony in committee meetings, and there's also some really interesting bills being introduced. For the purposes of today and our sector updates, my hope is that we can focus on updates at a high level and sharing some high level themes that you're paying attention to. And if further discussion about any individual bills is needed, I think we can find a way to have those conversations offline so that we can get to the other agenda items that we have. And certainly if there's more time in this agenda space that we have, we can open it up for a little further discussion about that. But with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Becca to share sector updates from FPR.
Thanks, Jackie. I'll start with a couple of departmental updates before I pivot into some of the bills and other activity at the legislature that we're tracking closely. I think it's exciting having Claire come on board, the recreation program manager that was introduced to you guys at the December meeting and is sitting in here today. She's taken the charge to pull an advisory group together to begin working on a SCORP update. We've submitted a 12-month extension request that'll give us the time necessary to bring on a contractor and really help make sure that we're balancing sort of the SCORP light update that we've talked about doing while building towards a much more robust and effective SCORP in the future. So stay tuned for opportunities to engage in that process as it continues to ramp up. I think also worth mentioning, something that Mike had been keeping this group up to date on, was the request by Standing Trees to have our department or the agency at large go through rulemaking for a couple of different processes and policies that we undertake with state lands management and planning. And you've probably all likely seen Secretary Moore's statements publicly in the news that we will be going through rulemaking. We politely declined to do it within 30 days as the petition from Standing Trees requested, and are dealing with litigation related to that. But in the meantime, we are interested and are embarking on a rulemaking effort that would basically codify the framework that's in place now that we believe is the right structure for interdisciplinary planning and management. And again, there's a really robust structure in place where public scoping, drafting, and public engagement on a draft is something that you will be invited to participate in as that timeline comes together and we begin that work in earnest. Similarly, exciting stuff that is underway. Last session, Governor Scott vetoed H606, and VHCB and several partners worked to explore sort of opportunities to advance some of the really helpful and smart components of H606. And that group has been meeting pretty regularly and actually is on the eve of releasing a request for proposals to hire a contractor or more to do a couple of different phases of work. One would be data gathering, just to better understand what the conservation landscape looks like in Vermont. And then the part two would be to facilitate a robust planning process with stakeholder engagement. And I think one of the first steps that's likely to occur from that, based on the Strategic Conservation Initiatives meeting yesterday, is to expand that core group that's participating in the planning work beyond this small sort of think tank that's been meeting. Once a contractor comes on board, they were brainstorming some ideas around how to expand participation in this process, and outdoor recreation was specifically mentioned. So I think it's likely that Trey with VHCB will be reaching out to us soon to be looking for opportunities for outdoor recreation representation in this effort. Again, as Jackie mentioned, there's a lot here. There's so much that I could talk about that I'm really excited to see happening. And even if we don't have the chance to talk more about it here today, I'm available anytime if folks are interested in getting a deeper dive into what this work is hoping to accomplish. And then the last sort of programmatic update is related to the National Park Service and the LWCF admin funding that we talked about in December. We all had our fingers crossed that Congress would pass the appropriations bill, which had included language that would allow states to tap into a grant opportunity for admin funding, which we see as a great opportunity for us to sort of right size our grants administration capacity, given that we're growing the pot of money available and want to be able to more effectively administer that funding source. So with that, we haven't received what the National Park Service calls a notice of funding opportunity for this yet, but we are having conversations internally within the department about what it would look like to leverage access to that federal money and allow us to grow our capacity in a meaningful way. So some really exciting stuff happening. The legislature, as Jackie alluded to, is no less surprising. Before I jump into that, I'll pause for questions and also pause and make sure that I'm following the agenda the way Jackie is hoping that I will. Anybody have questions about some of the programmatic updates I just provided? I don't see any. Jackie, are you cool with me rolling into legislative updates?
That sounds great, Becca.
Awesome. So the first one, I'll just start with our budget. We were invited to put forward a budget that asked us to hold steady at a 3% increase, which, you know, anybody that's paying attention knows that what it costs to be a human being in Vermont is way more than 3%. So we had to get creative with how we could grow and support our staff and provide the services to the public with such a minimal increase. And we're doing it. We're getting there. One of the things that we were able to maintain in the budget was that sort of baseline level of funding for VOREC, which is that $100,000, which any of you that remember from the early days felt like a huge accomplishment to have $100,000 in our budget for grant making. So it's back. It's still there. And I think speaking recently with our interim commissioner, it sounds like the governor continues to be supportive of what it looks like to provide grant funding through the the VOREC Community Grant Program. But because we're still focused on the FY23 money, it didn't really make sense to load us up with another $5 million without having us have the opportunity and the space to really be smart with how we're planning to make investments with the current $5 million. So that's just an update on sort of where we stand with VOREC funding. It could all change. You know, the legislature could decide that it's just too important and we can't let off the gas pedal. So we'll be monitoring and watching for that. And as such have plans to really help Julie get up to speed on what is VOREC, why is it important to ANR, why is it important to the governor, and you know, what we've been doing for the last couple of years and how she can be supportive of that. And all accounts are that, you know, she's really excited about what it means to, again, ensure the durability of VOREC in the long term. So this seems like a really good growth opportunity for us, capitalizing on the interest of our agency secretary. A couple of other.
I just wanted to add to that as well that we do have later in the agenda an update on how the working group has been thinking about the fiscal year 23 funding and laying that out. So that is a part of, you know, how we set up the structure and the stage for a future ask for the VOREC Community Grant Program. And we'll be talking about that in a little bit.
Definitely. So a couple of other things that have FPR staff members at the State House providing testimony are the use value appraisal programs, reserve category program design took place between last session and this session, and Keith Thompson and others are providing testimony on that. Another really exciting initiative that I think we look closely to for models of how we can do similar planning in the outdoor recreation sectors, the Forest Futures Roadmap. This is something that the legislature directed our agency to do and gave them $250,000 to do it. Sounds awesome. And I think the most recent update publicly came from our interim commissioner, Danny, at the Rural Caucus yesterday morning. And again, if folks are interested in having a better understanding of what's happening there, you have representation with Abby Long, and also I'm happy to put you in touch with folks that could talk a lot about what's happening there as well. Climate action, of course, you know, something that we are paying really close attention to, and Jane Lazorchek building out a climate office at the agency level and spending a lot of time in the committee rooms testifying on all things climate action. So pivoting to a couple of bills that are much more sort of recreation focused. There's the H126 bill, 30 by 30 biodiversity bill is what they're calling it. Got a lot of activity this week and last week. It's virtually the same as H606 from last session. They added water protection in to the bill this year. And I think we can all agree that accelerating the pace and quality of land protection is something we can get behind. Our agency has been focusing testimony on trying to help the committee better understand where the limits of permanent land conservation bump up against the realities of what it means to have a landscape where, you know, people live and need to have their basic human needs met, as well as permanent conservation comes with willing landowners. So there's been a lot of testimony. If you haven't watched it, I encourage you to. I watched Deb Brighton's testimony yesterday on tax implications of permanent land conservation. It was fascinating. So I encourage you all, if you haven't tuned in, it's pretty amazing. Originally, the committee was planning to do their first markup of the bill today. They decided to postpone that until next week, I think in large part because of some of the information they were getting from testimony provided this week. So it'll be interesting to see what comes about next week as they dig into some redrafting. H131 is a Green Mountain Recreation Fund bill. This one's, obviously near and dear to us in the sense that it's completely focused on what it means to advance the pillars of VOREC that relate to stewardship and really giving us the capacity to raise all boats around outdoor recreation standards of excellence. We are ready and willing to provide testimony and help support this bill in ways that are consistent with the governor's interests. If this comes off the wall, I think you'll start to see us engaged, but until then, we're kind of holding ourselves in abeyance. In the meantime, I think there's some talk of potentially developing an omnibus bill specific to outdoor recreation that would likely include this bill and another one called H85 on trail accessibility. So be paying attention to developments that happen there. And then the last one is another one that we've provided some comment and are supporting our sister department, Fish and Wildlife, with is the purple paint law, which would change up how private landowners can post their land. Have some real challenges with the way this bill is developed. So I've been trying to provide as much input as we can into that. So those are my legislative updates. Happy to entertain any questions or comments. Again, mindful of Jackie keeping time for us and making sure that we don't spend more time than we have available to talk about some of these bills.
I think we could have a couple of minutes for some questions. I see Drew, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it just is a comment on the 30 by 30 bill, the biodiversity bill, that I think it's important to note that there are, I believe, 4 other bills around the country on 30 by 30 right now. California, Massachusetts, New York, and Vermont, I think, are the only ones at the moment that have something active. But it is something that's definitely out there. I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, thanks, Drew. It was nice to see your name on the list of witnesses right out of the gate.
Sure, why not?
Other questions, comments, anything I missed or updates that have happened in the last, 3 hours that I missed? All right, great.
Great. Well, speaking of things happening in the last 3 hours, so I know I've done some quick Teams messaging and texting, and it sounds like Commissioner Josh Hanford is at the State House right now, and I don't think will be able to join us this morning to provide some updates from the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. I know there's probably a lot we've all been paying attention to around the work that ACCD has been doing and the housing opportunities that have been coming out of the State House. So we do have Amy Tomaso with us listening in and on behalf of ACCD. And Amy, I just wanted to give you the chance to introduce yourself. And please just go ahead and share your name and role. Yeah.
Thanks, Jackie. So I'm Amy Tomaso, Planning Coordinator with DHCD, Department of Housing and Community Development, here on behalf of Josh Hanford today. And yeah, ACCD staff has been really happy to be involved in the VOREC working group meetings, which I know Jackie will get to later. But yeah, Commissioner Hanford did not provide a formal update. So hopefully next meeting you get to hear about all the exciting housing and community development and community resilience stuff happening in our department.
Yeah, and in the meantime, if there is anything rising up that this group has questions about or would like to connect connect with Josh further about, please definitely let me know, and I can work to get in touch with Josh to get some more information about anything you're interested in. All right, so then I am going to turn it over for the Vermont Trails and Greenways Council update. I don't see Danny on the call, but Abby, are you good to share that? Great.
Yeah. Well, we just had a meeting yesterday, so perfect timing to share what's been going on. So I guess just to begin, Vermont Trails and Greenway Council, we're obviously continuing to work closely with all of our partners, especially highlighting FP&R and A&R, being in alignment with the agency and the department on the pending development of a collaborative work plan, and also engaging on the SCORP Technical Advisory Committee that Becca mentioned. I believe Nick is serving on that. Also, we had in-depth discussion of RTP Ranking Committee and longer-term program updates there. We'll have Vermont Trails and Greenway Council members serving again in some way, shape, or form on the committee. And then, Jackie, I'm assuming you'll speak more to the grant you're going after that Vermont Trails and Greenway Council will be supporting, providing a letter of support probably. And then other partners, we, Nick and myself, are engaged with the VOBA Policy Committee. Becca already mentioned the Forest Futures Panel, which I'm serving on. And then this is actually really exciting for folks to be aware of. The 2023 VRPA, the Vermont Recreation Parks Association Conference. It's an annual meeting. It's usually held at Lake Maury, but I think it's at Killington this year. It's in the fall. I think it's last week in September. There's going to be, sounds like they used to have this in the past, but not since I've been around, but they're gonna debut a trail symposium as part of that conference. So it won't be an extra conference or added day to the conference. It'll actually be in each session of the 2-day conference, there'll be a trail track. So there'll be workshops or panels or discussions that are focused on trails. And I am, along with a few other members of the Vermont Trails and Greenway Council, serving on that subcommittee for that conference planning. And that's super exciting. I'm learning a lot because I've never actually put together a conference. So, and it's a fun group of people to be working with. Moving on from our work with partners, as I shared at or as Danny shared probably at the last VOREC meeting, we had put out for hire a program manager to assist the Vermont Trails and Greenway Council, a paid person, imagine that. And we received applications, and a subcommittee of Vermont Trails and Greenway Council is going forth with first round interviews. So more to come on that, cross your fingers, but we're thrilled to potentially have someone to help drive us and our priorities forward. We've also been working hard on membership renewals and actually collecting fees. We kind of got away from that for a few years, but now we're back. So we have some income coming. So there's some continued outreach there to educate nonprofits, trail networks, and also municipalities and other folks about what Trails and Greenway Council is. So they join up. And then also, it's all very important, but the BMP working group continues to move forward their current scoping and creating an RFP for contract support in conducting landscape analysis of the existing BMPs nationally. And then there's a plan. The plan is to have future a finalized proposal and application process with hopefully the outcomes are to codify the current council's BMPs, positioning existing BMPs in the broader national landscape, and identification of functional tools we can subsequently develop to drive BMP adoption. And we do think that, we know that will be really crucial with any types of legislation movement with Act 250 or current use. further down the line, we'll be better prepared having those BMPs solidified. There's also legislative updates I can give, but it sounded like at the beginning of the meeting, we're gonna hang back from those, Jackie.
No, I think, Abby, if there are some high level themes that I know VTGC has had a presence at the State House, has been really tracking what's going on there. So it would be great to hear at a high level the things that VTGC is sort of sitting up and paying attention to and
Awesome.
interested in.
Great. Yes, Nick and I pinged Jill, who's been kind of our government affairs liaison, and she helped craft a little summary for us, so I can share that. Obviously, what's already been mentioned by Drew, we've also been paying attention to H126, the 30 by 30 bill, and I'm repeating myself now, repeating you guys. They took testimony all week, and the Vermont Trails and Greenway Council is crafting a letter of support, and we'll deliver that next week. So that's exciting. H131, the Green Mountain Recreation Bill, in the House Ag Forestry, but there is a Recreation Omnibus Bill that's currently with Legislative Council to be released soon that combines the Bill H85, a trail accessibility bill, and a bill allotting funds to VOREC. And then next steps in meetings regarding the rural omnibus bill is the Green Mountain Recreation Fund is Jill, who's representing us, has spoke with Dara briefly yesterday, and we are working on a strategy meeting for the committee, and they're meeting with the governor's staff. And then we're gearing up for Vermont Tourism Day on March 22nd. So save the date, it says. But the Vermont visitor economy, I'm reading off this. I feel bad. I'm reading word for word. Has a $3 billion annual economic impact and employs 10% of Vermont's workforce. I'm preaching to the choir right now. And you're all invited to join tourism and hospitality industry leaders at the State House on Wednesday, March 22nd, to engage with your legislators and raise awareness. So I'm sure that would have been a topic later in the conversation, but we'll be throwing our names in the hat there. So that's about it. That's all I got.
Any questions for Abby before we move on? Al, go ahead.
Thanks. And I'm not sure if it's for Abby or for Becca, but whoever has information, I'm curious about the purple paint law and what was discussed around that.
Well, you, Becca.
So the purple paint law is intended to provide an alternative to posting land with those paper posters. Yep. And it dictates, a certain distance, a certain, expectation around how you would paint. And I think Fish and Wildlife is having a problem with the bill because of how it changes the way a private landowner would communicate posting of land. FPR specifically, the input that we provided was more related to how this could create confusion around property boundaries and understanding memorialization and monumentation of property boundaries. So we had our surveyor weigh in on some of the challenges that could be associated with the way that they're describing how the purple paint would be, implemented and how it would be understood by members of the public.
Okay. If I'm not mistaken, this has been successfully implemented in a number of states across the country, hasn't it?
I don't know. That's a great question. Something I could definitely follow up with Fish and Wildlife on.
Okay. Cool. Thank you for that.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for the question, Hal.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think I'm going to move us along to updates from the Vermont Outdoor Business Alliance, but any other quick questions before we move on? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to move it along to you, Mike, for updates on behalf of VOBA.
Thank you. Mike Schmidt, again, the Vice Chair of VOBA and part of our executive committee. So just to take a quick step back, for those of you that may not know, VOBA was established in 2018 with a mission to really strengthen, attract, expand, and retain outdoor recreation businesses in Vermont. And as we entered our 5th year, our board determined that it was really important for us to begin to hone in on our areas of focus and to make sure that we were utilizing the capacity that we had as best as we could. So we began to work with Momentum, a consultancy group, to develop a framework and process for developing our priorities. And pretty quickly, those priorities honed in on business and workforce development. And so since past October, we've held our annual summit. We've had several listening sessions and board and work group conversations. And really what we need now is input from the VOREC steering community. So over the next few weeks, Kelly, our executive director, will be sharing a doodle poll, and we'd ask all of you to participate in that and give us your feedback. Some of the areas of focus that we've already honed in on, really 5 primary areas. The first is networking and education, reviving the outdoor business relationship so that we can learn together and convene seminars and various outdoor events. We're looking to increase our business-to-business support and mentorship programs. We're really focused on career development and defining what outdoor occupations are available in Vermont and tell stories about the various career pathways that exist around them. We also want to help serve as an accelerator to help strategically grow the outdoor businesses and the outdoor communities within Vermont. And then lastly, to also assist in financing to help expand the outdoor sector. So moving forward on implementation, as I said, next week, Kelly will send out a VOREC steering committee poll, and we'd really like your input on these emerging priorities. And then in late February, early March, we're going to draft a preliminary strategic plan, which will be followed up quickly by an implementation plan, how we bring that out into the marketplace. And these ideas will help launch VOBA and VOREC's workforce initiative this spring, which is going to help establish talent pipelines, work-based learning opportunities, and promote career pathways. So we're really excited about this. We're excited about the VOREC grant program, and we're hopeful that we can get as much input from all of you as possible. Any questions?
Not a question, but I just, thanks, Mike, for sharing that update. And I just wanted to add, for the benefit of this group, Kelly has been sharing updates with us along the way as VOBA's been engaging in strategic planning. I know many of you attended the annual meeting in, I believe it was November last year, which was really fantastic. And we've been really engaged in, building our partnership and making sure that these strategic planning conversations not only benefit VOBA and VOBA's internal, definition of like how they go about their work, what their goals are, and what their goals are for the business community, but also how can that inform VOREC action planning. What are those deliverables from that process that VOREC can also benefit from to help us better prioritize, how we work with VOBA on priorities underneath our outdoor business pillar. So just wanted to maybe help make that connection for you all. And then just add, Mike, for your benefit, and correct me wrong if I'm wrong, anybody, but I do believe that some of the support for the creation of VOBA initially came from some community conversations that happened throughout the state that VOREC originally led. So I think, this is another iteration of the partnership that we've had. And I really do hope that as many of you as possible participate in that conversation that Kelly is going to be sharing a doodle poll for. I think it'll be really helpful and ultimately also benefit our action planning. Drew, go ahead.
Yeah, just to echo what Mike and Jackie said, I think we're all familiar that VOREC is kind of a multi-pillar effort. Business is one, stewardship is another, infrastructure is another, et cetera, et cetera. And while VOBA is really obviously emphasized around the business and economic development pillar, it also much is over in all the other pillars as well, because we can't have we're not just doing it just to be the business pillar. I mean, it's the capital O outdoor business. And so for all of you who aren't in the business sector, your pillar also spills over into the business sector as well. So I think, it's just kind of a reminder that, it's kind of a, outdoor recreation is a team sport. And we all sort of, it's very diversified, and we're all sort of bumping into each other in our daily travels. So your input is highly valued.
Thanks, Drew. And I'll just add that I think something that I've been hearing coming out a lot through the updates this morning is, that sort of theme of partnership and growing our partnerships. I think with Vermont Trails and Greenways Council and the Vermont Outdoor Business Alliance, we've really been working hard behind the scenes to strengthen those partnerships and how we work together, and how VOREC supports and lifts up our partners. So just wanted to bring that to the forefront for you all in case you missed that. But I am hearing a lot of themes of, us being engaged together and really working hard to bring the outdoor recreation economy in Vermont to the forefront in a lot of the conversations that are coming up right now in the State House, and also just around strategic planning. And I think it's really exciting, and there's a lot of really great things that we're going to be working on together this year. Any other questions before I move on to the steering committee updates that I have? All right, great. So then I'm going to move us forward. So there's a couple of sort of like business house things that I wanted to cover, and note for you all that all steering committee members except Danny and Fraser are up for term renewals in June 2023. So just making sure that you all know that's coming up. Per our adopted charter, we do aim to limit turnover to 3 or 4 steering committee members per cycle, and those terms are for 2 years. And steering committee members are invited to serve for at least 1 term, but also welcome to serve more, and many people have. So again, you guys are important, and thank you all for your commitment to this work. Steering committee members are invited to reach out to me if you have questions about term renewals. I'm happy to talk through that with you one-on-one. If you are considering moving on from VOREC, I just ask that you reach out to me before our meeting in April, so we can talk about that further. I also wanted to share that I've been giving a lot of thought to the VOREC website. If you visited the VOREC website recently, you might have noticed I do have a message at the top of the webpage that it's under construction. And that is because I am really excited to get your feedback on what I've already done. I want to make sure that the website really reflects the story of our work and who we are, and invites people to engage with us. So just wanted to note that I've been working on that, and I hope you all will go take a look and share your feedback with me. I am planning to keep that message up there until probably the end of February, early March, to incorporate any suggestions or edits you all have. So please do go take a look there and get in touch with me. I also wanted to share a couple of updates around like the VOREC action planning work that I've been doing behind the scenes. During the December meeting, I shared that I'm preparing to submit an application to the River Trails and Conservation Assistance Program. I have been continuing to work on that application, and with the partners we identified during the last meeting to submit letters of commitment. As a reminder, those included the Vermont Outdoor Business Alliance, the Vermont Trails and Greenways Council, and the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. So I am hopefully getting ready to send those draft letters out to those partners in the next week or so. And my hope is that they'll be able to review and edit and sign and get that back to me so I can submit the full application by March 1st, which is the deadline. So really excited about that. I also want to let you know that I've been thinking about follow-up from the assessment activity that we did together in October. And I want to let you know that that hasn't fallen off the radar. I am thinking about how we incorporate a follow-up activity into our April meeting, which will be held in person, and I think a good opportunity for further discussion. Any questions from anybody about those sort of business logistical updates? Great. All right, so lots happening. And I hope to hear from you guys as you think about the website and other term renewal stuff further. So with that, I'm going to kick us over into our legislative session. Oh, and Drew, go ahead. I see you have your hand raised.
That was a mistake. Sorry. Just trying to.
All right, sounds good. All right, so yeah, we're going to get into the legislative session brainstorm. So I'll just start by saying that during our December meeting, it came up that it would be really helpful for steering committee members to have talking points and some materials that could be shared out with partners or used when talking with legislators. Since then, there have also been some opportunities coming up for VOREC to have a presence at the State House. So given the interest and need, I'd like to use this time today to first get your input on a narrative I've been pulling together in partnership with Becca on Vermont's outdoor recreation economy and VOREC's role. And then also take some time to brainstorm with you about some of these opportunities that are coming up and how the steering committee should or wants to be involved. Does that make sense to you all? I think we can start by doing some brainstorming around the narrative that Becca and I have been pulling together. Cool, clear, great. All right, so let me provide you with an outline of what we've been talking about, what we think this sort of arc that we want to tell about Vermont's outdoor recreation economy and the role that VOREC plays. So it breaks out into a couple of buckets. So the first bucket is to clearly define, and this is, if you can imagine like a presentation or talking with a legislator about like, what is Vermont's outdoor recreation economy? Why is it important? And then where is VOREC in that? So the first bucket, I think, is really clearly defining outdoor recreation economy and what it looks like in Vermont. That includes focusing on its intersectional cross-sector nature, how outdoor recreation is defined nationally by our partners and through data from the BEA, and the intersecting benefits to communities and contribution to Vermont's state economy. That's like kind of one bucket that might kick off a good conversation. The next bucket is VOREC's role in supporting Vermont's outdoor recreation economy. So that includes things like the structure of the program and our accomplishments to date. That includes like the development of the VOREC action plan through the series of statewide conversations that were held, helping set the framework for the strengthening of our partner relationship. So, the things we were talking about with the Vermont Outdoor Business Alliance and Vermont Trails and Greenways Council. And then setting up the VOREC Community Grant Program, I think, is another really big accomplishment that we've had. And that would all be under that sort of VOREC's role bucket. And then the last bucket is VOREC's vision for the future. And, we've been talking a lot about this the past couple of years, but I think that really involves, our action planning work, updating the action plan and strengthening our network, addressing complex emerging issues, tracking, being a source of data for Vermont's outdoor recreation economy, being able to be a hub for that data and reflecting the impact that the outdoor recreation economy has here, and providing a reliable funding source to communities for implementing outdoor recreation projects. So that's a brief summary. What I'd like to do now, I've created a Microsoft whiteboard to help us brainstorm together, and I want to get you guys involved in talking about this. So bear with me because I haven't used this tool before and I hope it's going to work. But I'm going to try and share this whiteboard with you. And I might have to click into it. Oh, nope, there we go. All right, so this tool, and sorry, Shelby, I know you're on the phone and probably don't have access to this. I can take notes verbally if you raise your, or if you want to unmute and chime in. But what you should be seeing on your screen is a whiteboard. On the left-hand side, it has this sort of what's the story with the buckets that I just mentioned. So you have those for reference. And then on the left, you should see, oh, it looks like it got deleted, maybe. So you should be able to interact in this whiteboard, but where the sticky notes are, that's where I'd like to collect your feedback. And the question is, you know, what's missing from this story? What are the core elements that you as the steering committee and members want to make sure we don't miss? And I do see some things moving around. Like I said, you all can interact with this whiteboard. If you click on something, you can move it. So on the left, you should have a drop-down menu and you should be able to add sticky notes or reactions or anything. You can type in the sticky notes that are on there. So take a few minutes, play around in the whiteboard and look at those buckets and just think about what's missing. What are those core elements of our story about Vermont's outdoor recreation economy and VOREC's role that we don't want to miss. And maybe I should move that the story out a little further so it's not in the way. Oh. And I'll look to see what's being added and share that out so folks on the phone have a sense of what's going on.
So Jackie, I'm sorry, you're looking for us to look at 1, 2, and 3 and add comments there?
So the prompt got deleted, unfortunately, before I got a chance, but I'm looking for your input. And wow, this is my first time utilizing this this board. So I'm just looking for you to add sticky notes, and the prompt is what's missing from these buckets. Wow, that just keeps getting bigger, doesn't it? You should be able, instead of making it bigger, to zoom in so you can see it at whatever level you need. All right. And if this isn't working, that's totally fine too. You can also reference the text on here. And maybe I can lock it. I'm just going to lock that down. So that should be locked now. You shouldn't be able to move that. And the prompt is what's missing. What are the core elements of this story that we want to make sure we don't leave out? And for reference, you know, I'm creating a PowerPoint slide deck and a one-pager that my goal is to use that when, you know, we're providing testimony to the legislature, but also share out to you all so that this can be a tool, you know, when you're providing to talk with partners or legislators about VOREC and Vermont's outdoor recreation economy, that you'll have this as a resource to draw from.
So Jackie, I don't know if other people are seeing the same thing, but I now can no longer see those prompts, so maybe we could just walk through them one at a time, perhaps.
Okay. And Drew, sorry, just making sure, but like, can you zoom out
Oh, there it is.
on your screen?
I can. Oh, now I found it. Yeah, I just have to get it. It's just been very hard to.
Yeah. Sorry, maybe I'm asking too much technological savvy from from our group.
Jackie, I'm wondering, we could drop the 3 in the chat and then have people share their thoughts in the chat.
That's true. We can do that. Would that work better for folks?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I don't know if I'm an outlier in this or if everybody's having the same sort of excitement.
No worries. We can do it both ways. So let me, it's not going to look quite the same, but I'll drop my notes. Into the chat. So let's talk about bucket 1 first. And I'm dropping that into the chat for folks as well. And what I can do is take notes on the whiteboard. And again, as a reminder, that bucket is about, that's like the first bucket. Well, actually, you know what? I'm going to do, it's part of an arc. So I'm just going to drop all of them in. Because I want us to be able to think about the story as a whole.
And then once it's dropped in there, we're going to interact by typing comments in, or do you want people to raise hands, or how do you want to do that?
Well, both ways, whatever works for you. I can look for hands and type notes, but if you have a comment and you're feeling pretty good about using the whiteboard, you can also go ahead and write your thoughts in there. So I'll look for hands, and I've dropped the different buckets into the chat, and the prompt is, what's missing? You know, what are the core elements of a story about Vermont's outdoor recreation economy and VOREC's role that we shouldn't miss?
Jackie, just logistically, I think Claire and I can try and take people's great ideas and put them on Post-it notes, because I do have the whiteboard up. So we can try and capture those ideas. And just for purposes of like opening the conversation, I added one in about whether there's a role at the beginning of this story arc to talk about sort of Vermont's place in that origin story of how this conversation was happening nationally and our participation in that conversation. So that's maybe an example of what you're looking for, is like people mentioning what they think are really important benchmarks or, you know, stepping stones along the way of VOREC's life that should be part of this story.
Exactly. Drew, go ahead.
Yeah, just starting from bucket 1, I think that one word that I think is missing from there is educating or helping people understand what that OREC economy is. I mean, I think defining it, I mean, maybe it's implied in defining it, but, you know, I think defining it is one part, but understanding the outdoor recreation economy is one of those things where everybody's sort of on their own place on the timeline in terms of understanding it. And, you know, until we have better and better data, it does take a little bit of explanation, both to policymakers and the governor's office, as well as to the rest of the outdoor recreation economy community. So I think, you know, defining it is part of it. You know, I mean, like stuff like the BEA numbers or OIA numbers, that's kind of the defining part. But I think helping people understand what that means and what that looks like in the state, you know, because I think there is a little bit of an over reliance on incomplete data in the outdoor recreation economy, and I think we have to, until we have a more complete picture, I think trying to fill that gap in is key.
Awesome. And Becca, you and Claire, I'm assuming, are taking notes in the whiteboard on that. Great.
Yep, got it.
What else? What
Do
else
you-
is missing from here?
Do you guys see 3 pink sticky notes? I don't know if I should be like verbally sharing or if people see what I wrote.
I can
Yes.
see them. But
You can
they're
see,
wicked
okay.
small.
I just don't see anybody else's, so I don't know if I'm. I remember one time writing on these and I was writing like 1,000 feet away from where everybody else was writing.
I see them, Abby.
Okay, all right.
It does
Oh,
seem
someone
like
deleted
there's a radical difference in the size of those 3 pink squares that you made there. That's now I can see them. Whoever did that, whatever that was, that helped a lot. There's a radical difference in the scale going on, but it seems like it's being corrected.
Yes. Great. Thank you for helping out with that. Abby, is there anything you wanted to share from the notes that you wrote, or?
Oh, sure. You know, if we're just talking about bucket 1, I do think mentioning the important role it played in COVID, that, you know, its impact goes beyond economic. It went to people's mental health and physical well-being during you know, time of isolation. Oh, and of course, Vermont specific definitions of outdoor recreation. I think it is important that private landowners get a shout out. You know, about 70% of outdoor recreation in the state of Vermont happens on private land, and that's important for legislators to note.
Yes.
And that they're not receiving compensation.
Okay. Thanks, Abby. Hal, I'm going to go to you next.
Thanks. Yeah, one comment, I actually have 2 comments. One would be that I think it's, if we can communicate how broad our recreation economy is, it would be helpful. I think it goes well beyond all the stuff we always talk about, like it's not just, you know, bikes and skis, but it's beer, it's food, that kind of thing. But it goes way beyond that too, I think. I think it's the cashiers in the grocery stores. It's the guy that delivers my firewood. It's the guy that plows my driveway. I'm paying him with dollars that have come from the outdoor recreation economy. So I think it just touches darn near everybody in Vermont. And I don't know how we get that message across clearly without it being too sort of grandiose, but I do believe it to be true, because I really think it does affect, and that's what's unique about Vermont, is because we rely upon this so heavily that it really touches everybody. That was one comment, and the other one was a little bit, I thought of this in relation to what Abby mentioned about COVID, is that the outdoor industry, the business side of the outdoor industry in general, and this is historically speaking, and historical returns may not actually predict future outcomes, of course, but historically speaking, the outdoor industry from a business standpoint has always done really well in any times of uncertainty, whether it's been economic uncertainty or in this case, you know, a pandemic. So I think that's another thing. It's a very resilient and very powerful industry in that regard. It often runs counter to the broader economy. So if the broader economy is suffering, i.e. maybe higher inflation rates, the outdoor industry still has done really, really well, because it's something that it's essential to people and for mental, physical health, but also just fun. And so money is still spent regardless of maybe a weakening of the broader economy. Sorry, it's a lot of words.
It's great. Thanks, Hal, for that contribution. And I'm going to go to Josh next.
So full disclosure, I'm having a hard time with all these sticky notes. So this might be repetitive, and it may be too in the weeds. I'm not really a big thinker. I'm more of a on the ground, nuts and bolts kind of guy. But is there value in sharing the economic impact of the VOREC community grant program and going back to projects that have been completed? Some of the times that opportunities I've had to testify at committee hearings and what have you, the people tend to like really wake up when I start talking about the money that we pump through with steel, wood, labor, material purchases. And I see that we've given out these grants. There's been things that happening. Can we go back and summarize the economic impact of that? So that's more of like a strategy, but maybe it could fit in somewhere to help out one of these buckets.
Awesome. I love that. And yes, I do think talking about the community grant program is really important and reflecting the economic benefits of that money that we've been able to push out to communities. And I think it's a great point that money that communities get also benefits our local business owners through the projects that they're executing. I believe, Abby, you're next. Go ahead.
I'm super happy to see the mention of the cross-sector nature for outdoor recreation. It's, it's easy to talk about the intersectionality of like the creative industry and the food and beer with agriculture industry, how they all uplift each other. You come for a bike ride, you get a beer after, and go see a show later that night or something. So they all, but I think there's one, we can also kind of, I hope I'm explaining this right. I always like to share how outdoor recreation and trails specifically can be a touch point of education for the forestry industry. I don't think a lot of folks think of it that way, but, through education signage or, folks from outside of Vermont can come and learn about our culture and learn about our traditional industries like logging and even use it as an education opportunity for healthy ways to manage forests. So I think it's still talking about cross-sector, it's just taking it a little deeper. And that outdoor recreation can serve to help educate others on that industry.
Great. Thanks, Abby. I did see, and I'm going to go to you next, Drew, but I did want to note that Rich dropped a comment in the chat about members like VAST and VIMBA being invited. And of course, VAST and VIMBA are an important part of our outdoor recreation economy. I think the level of partners that we're coordinating, VOREC coordinates through our network with a lot of different partners, including VAST and VIMBA. And I think finding the right level of participation and opportunities coming up will depend on the opportunity. But I appreciate you dropping that question in the chat, Rich. And I think more thought there depending on what opportunities are coming up. Drew, go ahead.
Yeah, it kind of stems from what Abby was saying a little bit, as well as what Hal was saying. I wonder if even like maybe bucket zero is really that outdoor recreation actually is one sector within the nature-based economy in Vermont. You have outdoor recreation, you have forestry, you have agriculture, you have carbon sequestration, and in Vermont and around the country, outdoor recreation has really had a collaborative and pragmatic approach to working with those various partners within the nature-based economy. And I think that is really kind of a hallmark of outdoor recreation, is our willingness to be a team player with those other sectors. So, and to Abby's point, to use our outdoor recreation to highlight how forestry works or something like that is certainly something that is an example of that collaborative and pragmatic approach.
Definitely. Thanks, Drew. I do want, in case, Shelby, you've been waiting to chime in with any ideas or thoughts. I did want to give you the opportunity to unmute.
I think she dropped off, Jackie. I just looked for her phone number when we pivoted to the whiteboard and I didn't see it.
Okay.
Hopefully she's flying somewhere snowy or warm.
Anyone we haven't heard from yet? Kim, or no pressure, but just wanting to create the space. Frank? Okay.
Carrie, I dropped into the chat that we should always kind of remember the solid baseline of volunteerism that underlies the entire outdoor recreation industry. It's both an advantage and something to kind of watch out for. One of those great communication tools, have volunteers working on these projects. It means that people are demonstrating their investment in them, but they're also increasing their awareness of what it is required to put it all in there. But it also means that if those volunteers weren't there, the incredible resources that we have to come to their level of source. And thinking of Josh, and he probably isn't taking on a whole lot of volunteers, whereas NFCT and KT are doing that sort of thing. So it's one of those, it's a balancing act, and I think it's really beneficial, but it's also kind of a liability.
Thanks, Carrie. And I do see Nick just dropped into the chat that related the role of private landowners in supporting Vermont's outdoor recreation economy. And thank you, Nick. And I also remember, Abby, that you made a really great point with 70% of outdoor recreation happening on through private land owners. All right. Any other points that we shouldn't miss are missing? And Drew, I want to go to you. Abby, I'm also just curious if you're raising your hand on that landowner point before we move on to something different.
No, I was just going to add conservation. I was talking about education about the logging industry, but even conservation too. But then I remember Drew had that article about, well, the title was like "Drunk on Our Own Wine" or something. Outdoor rec leading to more conservation. So I don't know if we want to talk about that.
That's thank you for the reminder about that. And I do think that there are emerging, issues and tricky, sticky places where, outdoor recreation overlaps with not only conservation, but other areas as well. And, communities and how communities are supporting outdoor recreation, interest in outdoor recreation. There's all of these sort of sticky topics that I think VOREC has a role to play in helping identify recommendations and having those sort of cross-sector conversations. I think that's a part of, for me, when I'm imagining this sort of arc, the sort of future of VOREC. Like, where does VOREC play a role in the future? How do we help support those conversations and productive outcomes coming from them? So thank you for adding that, Abby. Drew, go ahead.
Yeah, I think this is very much dovetails on what you were just saying, Jackie. I think in bucket 3, I think all this is sort of written as sort of a top-down, VOREC will be, and we will disseminate this way, but it's also the opposite way, I think. I think VOREC really is the place where if there's somebody who has an outdoor recreation opportunity or challenge or whatever it is, they know where to go in the state to put it on the table so it could be discussed and hopefully, I mean, not that we're going to be sort of a suggestion box for outdoor recreation in the state, but I think that's part of why we started this from a business perspective. So if a business had an issue, they knew what the channel was. There was an opportunity to get to a voice in the state. And I think the same thing for infrastructure and other things like that, just to have an ear that at least knows the situation and is preloaded on stuff. And anyway, so I just want to say that we're a listening agency and hopefully a place that people understand is the place to bring those emerging issues.
Agreed. Any other thoughts on this sort of future bucket? Are there things that we shouldn't want to miss? Does this does what's the storyline that we're sort of conceptualizing for VOREC, where VOREC is going? Where are we going after, accomplishing all of these really cool big things that we want to keep moving forward, but what's the next iteration of that? Are there things that we're missing there? Other ideas people have? I see Abby's contribution. We shouldn't forget to ask about grant funding, which I agree. That's definitely part of our story. And I think the story there is finding a reliable source of funding for us to be able to continue granting to communities. I think that's, Becca was talking earlier about, it didn't really make sense to include another $5 million ask at this time, but we are, as we're going to get into here in a minute, we've been talking about what's the structure for our Field Year 23 program, and thinking about what that looks like to really learn from some lessons we've had over the past couple of grant cycles, and build a program to be really useful for communities. So I think making sure that we're asking for funding, but also finding that reliable funding source and leaning in on this is important, and communities need this, and it's filling a space that isn't filled anywhere else. And we really need to invest in that and find a reliable source of funding to keep the program going. I think is important right now. All right, I'm going to stop, or actually, I'm going to do this. I want to highlight for you all some of the opportunities that are coming up in the legislature, some opportunities that we've gotten a heads up about, and want to make sure we're talking with you all about how the steering committee and steering committee members should be involved. I'm trying to pull that out here because I included it on the whiteboard. And you all should be able to zoom into that, but I can also drop those into the chat. So give me a second to do that. And since the legislature has come back into session, there is interest in hearing from hearing about Vermont's outdoor recreation economy. And I know I shared with you all in the first weeks of January that we'd gotten a request, or that I had been invited to provide testimony to the House Committee on Economic Development. There was a schedule conflict at that time, so we didn't provide testimony at that time, but we do expect it to be rescheduled. I've also heard from the Senate Committee on Economic Development that they would like to hear about Vermont's outdoor recreation economy and VOREC's role in February at some point. We haven't determined a date for that yet, but they have let me know that they want like an hour to an hour and a half to have that conversation. And as Abby mentioned earlier in our business meeting, Tourism Day has been scheduled for Wednesday, March 22nd. VOBA is participating in that planning committee as well as VTGC. So there is going to be a really large outdoor recreation component to that day. And there is an agenda for Tourism Day. They're planning, encouraging as many stakeholders in the outdoor recreation economy as possible to come to that event. There's going to be opportunities to provide testimony, just show up and show a presence at the State House. And then also opportunities to talk with your specific legislators. So what I want to get a sense of right now is, I'm pulling together these materials, PowerPoint, one pager. We have these opportunities that have been identified, that are going to happen and are coming up. It could look like me going with, just Becca and Josh. I think we want to make sure we have the FPR and the ACCD presence, and me being the VOREC voice. But we want to invite you as steering committee members to think with us about, do you want to be involved in like designing that 1.5 hour potential meeting with the Senate Committee on Economic Development? Do you want to be in the room? Like, what is the level of participation that you as steering committee members want to have as we're getting ready to participate in some of these opportunities? And I'll look for raised hands, or you can just unmute and chime in.
I think I'll just add to Jackie while everybody's, wordsmithing what they want to say, that, we have already seen both Hal and Drew providing testimony. And part of this similarly is understanding, how can we best equip steering committee members to be ambassadors of VOREC as well? And what does it look like to really provide you with what you need to feel confident going in and providing testimony on subjects that you think are relevant to VOREC?
Hey, Jackie, this is Mike. I would maybe spin the question around. I mean, I think one of the purposes of the VOREC steering committee and the values is to provide support. And so if you see specific areas where members of the steering committee can be helpful, then you should reach out and plug us in. I think depending on what the ask is, what you're trying to do, sometimes someone not from an agency, someone more place-based, local, can get more traction. And so you should reach out and leverage that. That could be someone from an organization, or maybe someone from like GMC or Bimbo would have someone in their network or VAS that could speak, right from that place-based, and that may help get that message across a little clearer and get more traction than maybe if it was coming from somewhere else.
Yeah, of course. That's a great point, Mike. And so definitely something we're thinking about as well. Abby, go ahead.
I was going to say very similar, having like actual examples, actual trail networks, but since it is the House and Senate economic committees, having that rural lens is also helpful. I know they're always looking for ways to boost the rural economy, where the places that are, socially and economically challenged in our state, how they can be reached. So we shouldn't forget that lens.
Yeah.
Just saying, there's one up in the kingdom, but great example.
I would just put out there, I think particularly for people who haven't testified or haven't been into a committee who are on VOREC, it's hard to sort of understand and imagine what that presentation is going to be like. So I guess I would sort of voice my suggestion that it would be great to, I think, know a bit more about, or have this is what it's going to look like. These are the messages we're going to hit, and then roll that out to VOREC to see if people want to weigh in on that. Just because, I think this is one of the sort of benefits of being on VOREC, is kind of strengthening that muscle to go in there and be able to do stuff like this. So I do think it's good to have different voices in there, but I think maybe give people a little more of a helping start there, just to and it would be good also for everybody to see it so that we could weigh in and be like, okay, here's where it's going. Because I do think, honestly, having been involved in a variety of outdoor recreation advocacy things, I think the difference between good ones and not as good ones are the good ones really focus on what is the big goal rather than just sort of putting out all the diverse elements, because there's so many diverse elements, and sometimes we sort of over rely on showing how many different parts there are, whereas what they're really going to want to know is what's the goal here. And I think that's an important topic to have in there. So I don't know, I guess I had a couple comments there.
I really like that suggestion, Drew, and involving people by sending out some materials ahead of time, inviting people to let us know if there are ways they want to participate that we haven't thought of, and also focusing on the big goal. I think that's a good point. Hal, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add to what Drew said about the actual testimony and how it's looked at. And what I remind myself of going into these things is that this isn't really about lobbying for any particular issue. It's not really about spouting opinions. It's really about educating lawmakers. They don't have a staff. And so they look to experts from various fields and walks of life to educate them on these sometimes multifaceted, complex issues that are in these bills. And so it's not as much about lobbying or convincing as it is educating. I would just throw that in there.
Great. Thanks, Hal. That's totally right. Carrie, go ahead.
I think following on what Drew and Hal have said, perhaps, you know, the challenge here is defining exactly what we want to say in that hour and to an hour and a half. And, you know, the different talking points that you put up on the whiteboard clearly define the outdoor recreation economy and what it looks like in Vermont. Does this committee understand, you know, the answer to that question? And I think that probably is first and foremost what we need to try to accomplish with this audience. And you know, without providing a laundry list of every single way that this economy impacts, but I think, you know, making it clear that everyone from the guy who delivers your firewood to the person who's tuning your skis to the person who's, you know, creating your trail and the conservation, that it giving people that sense that it's really every single facet, not to mention the fact that, you know, the outdoor recreation economy is what draws people to this state, because even if you're not working in that economy, you want to be near those resources. And so you may be bringing tax dollars into the state from some other job where you work somewhere else. But that outdoor recreation economy is also a significant driver of anybody who's moved to this state in many cases. So yeah, I mean, if we're looking to figure out what we want to say to them, let's define the outdoor recreation economy first and select people who are most adept at speaking to that.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing from all of you is, you know, it would be really helpful to have a sense of the plan going in from me, from FPR ACCD. What is sort of, how are we conceptualizing what that conversation and message are, and then allowing the opportunity for steering committee members to weigh in or to share more information from their specific area of expertise in preparation for some of these opportunities. So I think that's really helpful for us to know. And I think really for me, more clearly lays out, you know, the level of engagement that the steering committee wants to have around these opportunities, which is really helpful. All right, so just due to time, and I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, and just due to time, I think I'm gonna move us forward because I want to make sure we have the chance to share some information about, you know, the VOREC Community Grant Program with you all. If you have other thoughts about this conversation regarding the legislature, how we're engaging with some of these opportunities, the narrative around VOREC's with the VOREC space and Vermont's outdoor recreation economy, please definitely reach out to me through email, phone call. I'm happy to have a longer discussion about it. All right, so let's move on into the VOREC Community Grant Program agenda item. I have two goals for this agenda item. So the first is I have a brief update for you all on the progress we're making on fiscal year 22 funding. And then I want to update you on how planning is going for fiscal year 23 funding. So FPR has started executing grant agreements for fiscal year 22. I did share that out in one of the legislative emails, the weekly legislative emails that I pulled together. I hope you all caught that update. At this point, I'm really excited to share that we've executed 8 of the 24 grant agreements. And communities are getting started on that work, which is feels really good. Our business office has been working hard to staff up and get things moving again. And we finally feel like we're in a place where these grant agreements are moving out the door, and we're starting to get some reimbursement requests, some people interested in reimbursement. So funding is starting to move, and that is really great. Our large goal is to have all grant agreements executed, or as many as possible, by the end of March. So just so you all know, that's what we're working towards. And Any questions about that? Any questions about fiscal year 22 funding? Seeing none. So following our December meeting, so during our December meeting, we spent some time talking about fiscal year 23 funding and my proposal for structuring that into a series of funding tracks. And so following that conversation, I brought together a working group to assess and further flesh out that proposal. That working group includes Hal, Drew, Mike DeBonis, and staff from FPR and ACCD. And so just if you weren't at the last meeting, it did propose breaking, thinking about structuring the fiscal year 23 opportunity into a series of tracks, with the intention being to create this continuum that communities can enter into where they're at and move their project forward to completion. So that's the big idea. If you weren't able to join that meeting, I do encourage you to go back and look at the slides I sent out as a PDF document following the meeting. There's also a recording of my presentation on FPR's YouTube channel, so you can get a better sense of what that proposal included. I'm also happy to answer any questions you might have, and you can reach out to me individually about that. So the working group, since we came together, has met twice this month, and we're likely to meet probably a couple more times following this meeting. But I did want to share just a couple of outcomes from our conversations so far. So far, we've determined that the tracks identified in the proposal are the right ones to support the creation of this continuum concept. The working group has also determined that the highest percentage of funding should be allocated to what we're calling the implementation grants track. So that's the track that sort of maintains the structure we've created for communities to apply to a competitive grant cycle and receive funding for projects that are identified in their municipal, in a municipal plan. The most similar to, kind of the grant cycles we've been running to date. That's also closely followed by the track, a percentage, the second highest percentage the working group has talked about as being the track for outdoor equity grants. The other sort of outcome of our conversations so far have been that the working group has expressed an interest in finding a path for granting to projects that are smaller in size. So you'll remember that this past grant round with the fiscal year 22 funding, we set a minimum amount of $50,000 with no maximum. And the recommendation is to find a way to use this funding to provide smaller grants, so smaller than $50,000. So this group, we've had some really good conversations. I think we've made a lot of really good progress to date. Where we're at right now is a point where FPR needs to take some of this feedback and further define, I think, the how we stand up these tracks. There's been a lot of good feedback around like different mechanisms that we might use. And now I think the next step is for FPR to take that feedback and further flesh it out with the idea that we'll bring back the working group to assess that, further refinement and provide further input and suggestions. I know, Becca, you've also had some conversations about, this next step of the how and the buy-in of the Agency of Natural Resources and Forest Parks and Rec. And I just wanted to pause and give you an opportunity to share some of the conversations you've been having with Interim Commissioner Danny Fitzko and the Secretary.
Sure. Thanks for that, Jackie. I really appreciate all the work that you've led with the working group to get to the place we are with identifying in really strong, articulate statements what these priorities represent for municipalities and other applicants to the community grant program. And I think with that, what we've been working out is how does pivoting to this model of making investments around the state both help support the activation of VOREC's network, like who's out there doing what really well that relates to the ingredients that are needed to successfully invest this funding in outdoor recreation economies around the state. ACCD is an amazing grant maker. How can we tap into that so that FPR doesn't have to duplicate that capacity and that expertise, and can instead, use Jackie's role to better support what it means to achieve the more global goals of VOREC. So I think those are the conversations that I've been bringing Julie and Danny into, helping them think through, okay, VOREC's this great incubator that's been developing an enormous amount of interest in making investments around the state and outdoor recreation, but it's not practical for us to assume that FPR is suddenly going to size up to be a grant making entity and a technical expert in all the things that municipalities are coming to us with an interest in developing in their communities. So how do we look at what this $5 million represents to identify the partners that are out there that are already capable and have that content expertise that we could forge those relationships with? And the exciting thing that we are learning as we bring Julie and Danny into the fold is there are a lot of opportunities they see to also help create sort of the sustainable funding stream and the sustainable scaffolding around VOREC's role in keeping this money flowing out to communities. So I think what the working group has created has given us the platform to have conversations with folks like Julie and others that are connected with other state agencies and may have a perspective about some of our recreation partners or other, community development partners that could be providing support to us. So that's just really all I wanted to add on to what you've provided so far, Jackie, is that it feels like a great opportunity for us to not constantly beat ourselves up against that wall of like, we need to grow, we need to grow. It's more, we need to do this smart. And there are partners and other organizations out there that do the work that is involved in making these investments and seeing through the goals of the impact we want to have with this funding. And it's just a matter of sort of making those connections and getting that lifted up in a timeline that corresponds with us getting this funding in this fiscal year.
Thanks, Becca. And I know we're getting close to time, and I want to hold time for public comment in case any of the folks joining us on the call want to chime in. But I do also want to give Mike, Drew, and Hal an opportunity to share anything from their perspective that they want to share out about the working group conversations. So Mike, Drew, or Hal, and anything to add or any questions?
Yeah, one thing that I think is kind of integral to the conversation is I think there's a very strong awareness that a full receipt of $5 million is a best case scenario, and very likely it might be approached in a different way. So really we're trying to look at what the percentage emphases are, so how, based on here's the implementation grant, and then how much should go towards sort of, upstream of that and downstream of that. I would also like to say that there's been a lot of thought about those smaller grants and the equity component, and really some really thoughtful considerations there. So I think it's been a very positive conversation.
Thanks, Drew. Hal or Mike, anything to add?
No, I think you all covered it well.
Yep, nothing further. Thank you.
Awesome. Great. Yeah, so again, I mean, we're working on this. It's a big priority to get this figured out so we can launch the next round of funding. I think, like Becca said, we're trying to be really smart about it. And this is a big opportunity, this $5 million, and we want to make sure that we're using it to make the biggest impact we can for communities and for outdoor recreation and our economy in Vermont. So thank you. Thanks to the folks working on the working group for your contributions thus far. I think it's been a great conversation, and we'll continue that. We'll continue working on that. All right, so members who are joining us from the public who aren't part of the steering committee, do want to give you the chance to chime in. I do see we've lost a few folks, but if there's anyone left who would like to chime in and share questions for the steering committee, observations, things you didn't get to add during our discussion, please go ahead and unmute now. All right. And seeing none, I'm going to ask if there's any other business, anything we missed, anything that's burning that you want to share before we end our meeting today together. All right, great. Well, as I mentioned earlier, our next meeting, I'm really excited. We have all of our meetings scheduled for 2023. So I can confidently say that our next meeting will be in April, second Friday of the month. That meeting will be in person, and I am working on figuring out what location we're going to meet in next. I'm looking at the survey results that you all shared last year about, interest in communities. I'm also thinking about, what communities who have received VOREC funding are really actively working on completing their projects. I think something I loved about our last in-person meeting was getting to talk to the town of Poultney about how they've been using that funding, get a tour of their community. And I'd really like to keep that going so you all can see the great work that this funding and our conversations together have been, that they're making an impact and that things are happening. And I think that's really important. So I'll share more with you as I have about the location for that meeting. And I think it's likely we'll try and hold it a little further north so that our folks who live up in the Northeast Kingdom can join and participate, since we held it so far south last time. But more to come on that. Really excited. Like I said, I think, that agenda will definitely include a follow-up discussion about our action plan, the actions identified in our action plan, and assessing those, as well as conversations with wherever we're meeting. So thank you all for your work. Really appreciate you, as always, for making the time and space to be here. You're huge resources for this effort, and I'm really excited about the work we're going to do together this year.
Thanks, Jackie.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very
Thanks,
much.
guys.